the real Monster D. That would be me. So much of the world is hyped for the coming of Godzilla vs. Kong. I know I certainly am. Of course, questions quickly turn to what the next great big Titan battle might be. And of course, as long wished as Godzilla vs. Kong might be, that still, to me, counts as a rematch. But the second biggest Titan fight that everyone wants is one that has yet to occur on screen anywhere truly officially. And that, of course, would be Godzilla vs. Gamera. But I know, so many people will jump to say that it's impossible. The studios cannot agree. It can or cannot happen. I am very optimistic. I do think one day things will work out and peace will be made and it will happen. I do not know when, but I feel like Marvel has taught us a lot in the ways of keeping hope alive. But let us take turtle steps. For the meantime, I wish to propose a battle that most certainly could happen. Yes. Gamera, first of all, needs to come out of retirement anyway. I mean, the last Gamera movie, Gamera the Brave, came out all the way back in 2006. Wake up, sleepyhead. You need to protect some children. And the best way to do that, I would say, is with Gamera versus Daimajin. Da, da, da. Yes, one of my personal favorite kaiju, and still quite relatively obscure. But the beauty here is both Daimajin and Gamera are owned by Dai Katakawa. So they immediately could come to blows. Now, stylistically, they might clash a little bit. I mean, depending upon how you handle Gamera, because they both came from the Showa period, and at that point, Gamera was still a little bit more of a goof. He was the friend of children. He was letting little ones ride on his back and that sort of thing. And Daimajin, there was no goofing around in any of those movies. They were taken as serious as a kaiju film could. I would say the first Daimajin is even perhaps the second most serious of the classic kaiju era after the original Gojira. And not to mention, Daimajin takes place in feudal Japan, long before modern civilization, while Gamera was put in quite a modern era. So, how do we get those two to meet? Well, I think it takes some creative crossing of some of the various origins, but first you take the Heisei concept of Gamera, which saw him built by an ancient civilization. He was actually constructed. He was sort of an ancient, forgotten technique of, I guess you could say, biomechanical engineering. And he was made to fight Gauss and perhaps some other would-be attackers. So, I would say that perhaps what might have happened, what could have happened, is these villagers first put Gamera together and used him to defend themselves from Gauss. Gamera was new, and although a creation, still capable of free thinking. And this is when the rub comes. See, when Daimajin is summoned, it usually is at the hands of a pivotal, perhaps royal Japanese family who has come under strife, often attacked by marauders. Perhaps this little assault begins with Daimajin following the last few people who had attacked his protective village, because the thing about Daimajin is, once he sets his sights on attacking a group, an army, what have you, he makes sure every last one of them is destroyed. No matter where they go, where they run, where they hide, he will find you. He has those sort of spiritual powers and know-how and knowledge. So he could track some of these marauders, perhaps all the way to the village of the people who had created Gamera. And the other thing about Daimajin is he can be very indiscriminate. All of the villagers, even those who summon him, are always afraid that he is going to turn his wrath on them as well. And perhaps he does. Perhaps he starts raising this village in equal measure with the bandits who sought refuge in it. And this, of course, awakens the ire of Gamera, so they come to blows. But what would that fight look like? You have this hard-shelled, reptile against this sort of ethereal stone spirit capable of changing forms. I mean, who could possibly win in this matter? Gamera has flight. Gamera has fire. Gamera is really, really tough to crack, although not impossible to crack open. He has sustained quite a few mortal-looking wounds. And Daimajin, I do not even begin to know the end of his powers. I mean, he is capable of self-healing, self-regenerating. In his debut film, he took a spike to the forehead and just continued to attack as though it were never there. He has the ability to turn into this sort of fireball form and fly in that way, so Gamera flying could not necessarily evade him. Furthermore, while I would say that Gamera is more quick and agile on land in hand-to-hand combat that we've seen, Daimajin in his flight form is very fast and very quick turning. He could catch up to Gamera with no problem at all there. So, regardless, sparks would fly, flames would grow, and the attack would be fierce and mighty. And it could awaken Gamera to an entire generation of new fans, and also, finally, put Daimajin back into the spotlight where he belongs. I would love more people to learn more and go back into these old films, which I cannot recommend enough. Daimajin. Ugh. So yes, Godzilla vs. Kong will be amazing. Godzilla vs. Gamera would be amazing if it could happen. But Godzilla vs. Daimajin can happen, and it most definitely should. What is metal? Dark, loud, violent, angry. Perhaps these descriptors can be ascribed to the genre, but is that always the case with heavy metal? Is it truly always and only just an angry, violent form of music? I would beg to differ that thought. Yes. The way I like to define heavy metal is simply exaggerated emotion. And that can be any emotion. Certainly, anger and rage are easy and ready for the picking right there. But that can also include feelings of sadness and sorrow, love, and yes, even joy, happiness, yes. And thus, what I have today to show you are 5 happy heavy metal songs. Yes. So if you're looking for a way in that does not seem quite so dark and stormy, this is the list for you. The first song comes from the album Hellbent for Leather by Judas Priest. And the song is Rock Forever. This one starts off with a joyous bang. This song essentially is describing one's joy and love for the heavy music. But the way it begins, it essentially starts off with one actually getting out of work. Have you ever had that feeling where you just escape the doors of your office or wherever you might work, and you get into your car or you turn on your headphones and you just cannot wait to listen to the first note of your favorite tune. Well, that is what this song is about. When the day is over, I like to ease my mind, is what Rob Halford screams with joy. There is not an angry note in this entire song. The descriptors for what metal is that he gives in here are just so perfect and eloquent. It's like the brilliant sunshine after standing in the pouring rain. That is Rock Forever by Judas Priest. Next is an oldie but a goodie. This is Easy Livin' by Uriah Heep. This is found on the Demons and Wizards album, which for the most part is actually a very positive, curious and wondrous, if not upbeat album, save for maybe 2 tracks. I cannot say that Rainbow Demon or Paradise of Spell is particularly happy, but the rest of it quite uplifting, I would say. And Easy Livin' in particular, what this talks about is, do you ever find yourself in a situation where things have been going rough, you've had a bad time, you've been working hard, sweating, and suddenly, without warning, you wind up just where you want to be. You know, you finally have and are with that perfect lover, or you have that job that you've wanted, you're in the groove, and by the time you're so far in there, you haven't even noticed it until now, and you go, oh, okay, this is a thing I've never known before. Easy living. This is a place I've never been before, and I've been forgiven. So yes, a very happy track, and especially for being an early 70s entry, the great thing about it is, although Uriah Heep are known for their ballads, their long, windy songs, this is far from it. This is not even a 3-minute long song, and for it being so exuberant, it pounds. It has a very fast, continuous, relentless sort of riff going on there, so it is very heavy metal and yet very easy living. Next comes from a metal maestro of Iron Maiden himself, Bruce Dickinson, in one of his solo efforts. The album is Tattooed Millionaire, and actually this is a bonus at the end here called Spirit of Joy. This is actually a cover of an Arthur Brown song, and by the way, Arthur Brown brings his own kind of happiness and joy. But this song is all about the delivery of its chorus. It's simple, but right to the heart. Oh, Spirit of Joy. And the way he sings it here, it has a very sort of gospel choir kind of sound to it. You know, it is very uplifting. It's sort of bring the joy onto yourself, not necessarily waiting for others to bring joy to you. Very exuberant, very great. Bruce definitely shows yet another of the many sides to himself. So yes, bring some spirit of joy into your life. Both the Bruce and the original Arthur Brown version. The next track comes from the Bad Boys in Motorhead, off of the album Ace of Spades, and the song is one word: dance. Now, some of you might be thinking, Motorhead, but are they truly metal? I know Lemmy never considered himself metal. I am not going to entertain heavily that argument. I mean, hey, if nothing else, their songs are found in darklyrics.com, and that has to account for something, right? But dance, it is heavy, it is driving, and yet it calls to a different era than itself, sort of a 50s, early 60s kind of sock hop kind of feel. In fact, what it makes me think of is maybe somebody traveled back in time to one of those old-timey 50s sock hops and brought this song with them and threw it on, and they sort of ruined the dance and yet uplifted the dance to a different level. And and all the lyrics are so just positive and upbeat. It's all about if you want to feel all right, and dance. And so yes, highly recommend this. This might be one of the few heavy metal songs you could legitimately swing dance to. I highly recommend it. You might want to bring some extra energy along with you ahead of time because you will sweat it off. So dance. And last, but certainly not least, is Born to Be Wild. Oh, but not the one you're thinking of. This is a cover by Raven, featuring Udo Dirk Schneider. This is one of the first 2 songs I ever heard recorded by Raven. And the first time I heard their rendition of Born to Be Wild, I fell over laughing. Because that song is so iconic and so perfect, they do not even try to improve or do anything else to it. They just record the song and had fun. I could be wrong, but I would easily believe that they took this in one gleeful take because, wow, it is just exuberant. It's sped up even faster than the original, and both Udo and John Gallagher trade off lyrics back and forth, and it's almost like they're having dual sort of falsettos. It almost feels as though whenever one goes higher, the other goes higher, and the other goes higher, and it's just a barrage. And there's such a level of madcap glee in this, you just cannot help but to be infected by it. Yes, it infected me to become a major fan of Raven, because this very well encapsulates the whole rest of their career. I mean, sure, they have some songs that are decidedly aggressive and angry, but I would say all throughout their discography, even in the heaviest of songs, they have this era of fun that goes with them wherever they go. You can tell, the bandmates, when they're together, they enjoy being together. John and Mark, the brothers, whenever they're on stage, they just cannot help but to bring this sort of joy and brightness to one another. So it's heavy, but it is as happy as it can be, perhaps in the most maddening, insane of ways, but still happiness. And these are 5 happy heavy metal songs. Welcome to the Monster Challenge. Today I have something very challenging in particular to draw. Something that I have no visual on, I cannot directly immediately see. I'm going to draw my monstrous self. Yes. Do you ever draw yourself? How accurate do you think I can get without really looking at any pictures, a video, or references, just purely from the mind? That is right. Right now, right here, Monster D is going to draw Monster D. So first, I'm going to start out with my lovely locks. I'm going for a more sort of stylized rendition of me. I go back and forth all the time with how monstrous I want myself to look. So yes, I have in fact drawn myself before. If you had seen any of my flyers from my Comic-Con hopping days, many of them were filled with self-portraits of various kinds. Some of them I used references for, photographs and such. Some of them I did not. I just went by sort of a combination of memory and feeling. Both are valid and entertaining exercises. I heavily recommend anyone try at times, from time to time. Get my big old wide beard here. The challenge is always how much of my mustache is above my mouth and how much just is the mouth there. see. I think that is fair. So if you drew a picture of yourself, how monstrous do you think it would turn out? Of course, you know I am hoping for highly monstrous right here, right now. Let me see. All right. I also am a big fan of having the cape draped over my shoulders, like so. A little bit dramatic there. I'll go back and darken this hat brim. One of the stylistic choices I often like to make, both for simplicity and for sort of a striking visual, as I give myself these big sort of cartoony triangular blank eyes. You know, the blank eyes for a long time are sort of a hallmark of certain masked superheroes. So I like to continue that tradition a little bit in and out of my work. If you have not looked closely, fear not. My eyes are indeed not blank. I am quite and well pupilled. But it is certainly fun to imagine oneself in different ways, is it not? What are some ways that you might imagine yourself being or becoming or appearing that you might not normally? I mean, granted, when I draw myself with a cape and a funny hat and costume, obviously that is quite a slice of reality. However, I could always add to situations in which I am not necessarily as able to accomplish on a quick in-person whim. You know, it may not be the easiest thing for me to whip up a dragon and ride on it right there, but should I so choose to do so, that can very well appear in my artwork. What would you do if you could do anything when drawing yourself? Would you fly? Would you soar through space? Would you walk on the surface of Mars or some unknown, far more distant planet? Let me see here. I'll get a suggestion of my little symbol here. All right. There are some parts of myself I probably draw almost completely different every time. If I do not use references. If you're creating a work of sort of sustainable fiction, you know, for market use, I would recommend more repetition in that, a little more fine-tuning with how things look. But it is okay to cut loose when drawing and just sort of do things with your feelings. All right, and then let's see here. Getting that little symbol there. Okay, I'll be honest with you. As I'm looking at this symbol, I might just be peering down off and on a little bit on my own chest. So if that is a little more accurate than it appears to be, I'm sorry. If you want to say that I have already failed my challenge, by all means, feel free to think that. But I have no mirrors. I have nothing to look at my own face with. So, I've at least got that right. Alright, now I'll do some quick shading. So it's always a challenge when doing the 5-minute monsters in person. Is figuring out ways to get shading, but to do so as quick as possible, as eloquently as possible, and also, to be honest, with as much ink conservation as possible. Because I could easily empty almost an entire market with one entire marker. My apologies. With one drawing like this. And that is not necessarily what someone wants to do amidst a 5-minute drawing. All right. All right, and sign. Put my name by my face, and we are done. And here is me. Do you see the resemblance? Do I have a twin now? Which of the two is the most monstrous? Well, I hope you enjoyed this little drawing challenge, and I hope you enjoyed this video entire. If you have, please do click on the like button and toll that bell, and also keep in mind I have a Patreon you can subscribe to help support and keep the monster lair running. Well, until next time, I am Monster D, and I am asking you to stay monstrous. Next week's Daily Kaiju theme will be Indonesian Interminates.